Hello, welcome back to another episode of the Element in Architecture podcast. And in this episode, we are going to be diving to, perhaps you may call it, the beacon of postmodern architecture in the deeply mesmerizing and spiritually profound world of Pritzker Prize-winning architect Tadao Ando's Church of Light, or Chapel of Light. Now, standing in the suburbs of Ibaraki, Osaka, this ecclesiastical structure, or religious structure, completed in 1989, represents the intersection of minimalist design and profound spiritual resonance, the pinnacle of Japanese postmodernist architecture. The Chapel of Light not only stands as a paragon of Ando's architectural philosophy as one of the greatest Japanese postmodernist architects, but this exact style recreated by this church, as we will talk later on about, redefines the tendencies of Japanese postmodernist or perhaps even modernist architecture at the time. In this episode, we'll explore the unique design elements of the Church of Light from the perspective of its functionality combined with its materiality and its signature use of lighting, as well as how Tadao Ando's architectural and design philosophies is profoundly reflected in this masterpiece of the work, the Church of Light, the Chapel of Light. To truly understand Ando's intentions behind this work and the influence, we must first understand the status of Japanese architecture at the time, or even before that time. Japan's investment in modernist architecture started due to the Meiji period and peaked in the years following World War II, defined by a period of rapid industrialization and mechanization, which is strongly promoted by the Western world. The influence of modernist architecture created by the Western world is seen through the trend of metabolist architecture, or the trend of metabolism throughout Japan, which is characterized by large-scale, exposed concrete, alongside the abstinence from ornamentation in its architecture. Now, given such architectural landscape, emerged postmodernism in Japan in the entire world in the late 20th century, as a reaction against sort of the blandness of the principles and aesthetics that is promoted by modernist expression. And so the postmodernist is created as a result. The impact of postmodernism on Japanese architecture is in fact so substantial and large that it found itself claiming a redefined sense of modernity and traditional Japanese forms in architecture. Now, this is where Tadao Ando comes in. You can call him the face of the revolutionary postmodernism. Ando cleverly interplays material, space, and light, most of all light, in his highly minimalist architecture, serving as a refinement of Japanese modernist expression seen in many metabolist architecture at the time. Now, the Chapel of Light particularly serves as an epitome of the postmodernism that is unique to Japan. Now, for Ando, Chapel of Light is an embodiment of various dualities, the dualities between dark and light, solid and void, stark and serene. The so-called duality, the dual nature of existence, is the theme that is encompassed throughout the entire church architecture. We can see some form of we can see at least some form of contrast everywhere throughout the building, which enhances a sense of spiritual and secular awareness within individuals that is in the architecture. When we start with any Tadao Ando works, the signature use of reinforced or raw concrete and the simple form of the architecture is inseparable from the discussion of the architecture as a whole. The uniform reinforced concrete that makes up the volume of the Church of Light serves to emphasize the simplistic and minimalist quality of the church architecture as a whole. Now, the most prominent design element this church contains is the use of lighting. The altar front wall of the church consists of 4 pieces of concrete that hovers weightlessly next to each other to form the cutout shape of a cross, allowing natural light to penetrate into the interior of the church, which is devoid of any artificial lighting. By allowing natural light to pass through relatively narrow apertures of the cross, Ando cleverly diffracts or diffuses the light that enters the interior of the building, projecting it onto the walls and the floor of the space, and striving it for maximum brightness within the dark stillness of the interior space. In this way, a sense of space is achieved through the light entering the aperture, almost as if interrupting the still darkness filling the space of the church architecture. Now, the dynamic patterns of light and shadow within the building thus creates a contrast, a duality between light and dark, of void and solid within the church. It is then the intersection of light and solid, as well as the duality here, that evokes a dramatic atmosphere that enhances the individual's awareness of the divide between the spiritual and the mundane. And this is the clear design goal that is envisioned by Tadao Ando himself with this the Church of Light. This duality is further compounded by the materiality of the church space with the use of reinforced concrete. The monolithic and solid nature of raw concrete heightens the spatial complexity within the interiors of the church, evoking a sense of void and also adding darkness to the space that is otherwise in contrast with the light diffused through the apertures. We can see again here these duality created between the sense of void and the sense of solidness. Also the duality between light and the duality between dark in this that almost runs through the entire church. Now, this builds on the deeply immersive environment within the chapel, creating a more meditative place of worship. Meanwhile, in other parts of the church, thin gaps between different parts of the walls that make up the church allows slivers of bright light or bright natural light to penetrate the darkness that is filled within the church, which overall enriches the spatial complexity through the intricate interplay of light and shadow. So this form of interplay between light and darkness is seen throughout the building and is mainly shown in the religious symbol of the cross. We can also see the duality of void and solid in another way. The thick reinforced concrete walls stated by Ando himself as used to create a full and satisfying space for an individual. Now, this strikes in contrast with the sense of void that is communicated in the unornamented and unadorned architecture that we've seen with the use of the unornamented and pretty bland, so we might call it, through the use of the exposed concrete walls. Now, Ando's approach took on with this architecture is exemplified through the single religious element of the cross, defined by an aperture in the wall, along with the simplistic and minimalistic quality of the materiality of the church, which is highly minimalistic and reductive of religious ornaments found in typical churches. Now, despite its controversy as being undefined, empty, and void, this form of minimalism is exactly the architectural purity radiated by the reinforced concrete walls that are unadorned and devoid of any form of ornamentation. Such use of the raw concrete not only aligns with Ando's emphasis on minimalism and simplicity in his philosophy as an architect, but the immaculate pouring of concrete to erect this church also shows of a luminous quality when exposed to natural light. This helps in creating an effect on the interior concrete walls that transforms the dark volume into a brightly illuminated space. Now, one of the reasons that Ando claimed to have used the concrete other than to specifically create a spatial effect in this architecture is to also to show the possibility to create a deep and enriching space with a minimalist philosophy and minimum budget in the very highly materialistic era at the time. And although bold, this move shows itself as revolutionary in the architectural realm at the time in Japan. Tadao Ando's Church of Light stands as a testament to the transformative power of Ando's philosophies that emphasize the interplay of light, space, and materials. Through the combined use of light and reinforced concrete in the Chapel of Light, which is critically perceived as void, undefined, and disturbing, we can see Ando's intent to powerfully confront the interplay of light and shadow, solid and void, in his architecture. The Church of Light not only serves to reflect Ando's architectural philosophies, but is enough of a masterpiece of work that in many ways serves as an emblem of Ando's many works that redefines Japanese postmodernist architecture through the depth conveyed by his elemental manipulations. And that is it for this episode. I had a lot of fun exploring Tadao Ando's most remarkable and famous work that he made, that is the Chapel of Light. And I will see you guys in the next episode of the podcast. Bye.